God designed women to be beautiful. It's part of our inherent nature to be the beautiful counterpart to Adam. And the enemy loves to take anything that God has designed and twist it and turn it into lies.
Jessie, welcome back to Focus on the Family.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you here. And man, you know, it was 10 years ago. The team was looking this up, and we recorded together. I think that was the first time.
Yeah.
And you introduced me to a new term, crushaholic, a teen girl term.
Remember that, yes.
Yeah, crushaholic. You like that? It stuck with me. So let's get back to crushaholic. What is it? And what challenges do teen girls have today with crushaholicism?
We'll just keep making up words. It's fantastic. Yeah, I kind of coined that term back then when I wrote Crushed to describe my life. That pretty much summed it up. And so many teen girls, I think, kind of go from one like to the next, and whether it's stopped when they don't receive that attention or affection from that guy that they're crushing on. But there's just, it's sort of can be summed up as a hole in our hearts that we're trying to fill by love and attention from the opposite sex. And sometimes it can be relatively harmless, and sometimes it can cause a lot of damage to our hearts.
You talk about the concept within the Christian community of brothers and sisters in Christ and treating one another as siblings. That's really interesting. I'd never thought about it that way, but it's a great concept. Explain it more thoroughly.
I've thought for a long time that what we're really after, that even that crushaholicism, there's a desire for connection and community. We're looking for love and relationship, not just of the romantic variety, but we want to be seen, we want to be known. And when God designed family, he designed family to fill a big part of that for us, you know, with parents, with siblings, and we learn in Scripture that God designed family not just in the sense that we think of the nuclear family, but also in the faith family. That when we join his faith family, we get more mothers and brothers and sisters and fathers and daughters. And I know for me, and I believe Jim as well and John, we have benefited from having other family members in the faith family who have poured into us and have spoken into our lives. It was sort of revelatory for me to learn as teen girls and as young adult women, having brothers in Christ, seeing them not just as a potential romantic relationship, but actually a brother that we can learn from, that we can learn how to throw a football correctly, and we can learn how to just all the things that men bring to the table that we can learn from, and vice versa.
Well, and you know, I remember a Christian camp I went to at 17. I ended up kissing a girl. I mean, so I would have benefited from thinking of her as my sister. That would have helped me. Because there's no way I would have been kissing my sister.
Right?
So I
That's
kind of went.
Book title I think I want to write, Stop Kissing Your Sister.
Right. Because I mean, that's part of it. And one of the things with my boys, I'm always trying to talk to them about in the dating moment, because they're in their 20s now, but even in that dating space, teens, 20-somethings, I'm constantly saying, now you got to remember that girl is somebody's future wife.
That's right.
So you got to take care of her and take care of that relationship. I haven't said, you need to think of them as your sister. That's like a doorstopper right there, but that might be my next line.
But there is
something to that. And I took it when I, was thinking of that question, I was thinking of it more in that context, like handle each other well.
That's right. That's exactly right. To think, unless you are husband and wife, you are brother and sister first.
Right.
And so how are you going to approach this relationship? For girls, I'm saying, how would you dress for your brother? Like if you're going out with your brother, how would you dress? Like what kind of
sweatpants, sweatshirt?
That's right. You be yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, right.
And it takes off some of the pressure, and then also sets up some boundaries for just approaching the relationship in a God-honoring way.
Yeah. You mentioned in the book this long relationship that you had with your high school sweetheart. I mean, you brought it up, not me.
I know. I'm kicking myself for it.
So everybody's going, how could you talk about that? No, she wrote about it in this great book, Your Brightest Life. But you point to that, and that was a long 3-year relationship.
3 years.
That was a long time.
Yeah.
You know what's when I look back on that, it's almost like we're pretending to be married at that age, right? We're going through those relational connections like that, as if we live in separate houses, but you are almost performing like you're married.
Yeah.
So what did you learn from that, and how did it end?
How did it end?
Let's go right there. I mean, but what were those emotions?
Yeah, well, it was. And I have to say, looking back on it now as an adult and now having teen girls who are going through their first relationships, it's all been brought back up. And I'm kind of analyzing it all from a different place of, at the time you invest 3 years of your life, and we did date like we were married in a lot of ways, for better and for worse. There's a whole other book I've written on that. But as I'm reflecting on it now, you learn so much about yourself, and you learn so much about love, and how if you're doing relationship well, how to communicate and how to practice love, 1 Corinthians 13 style, how to be selfless and how to put the other person first. So there's a lot of good that can come from those relationships, even in high school. Like I often tell parents, there's not a junior form of love. Like when you're in high school and you feel that love, it's the same emotion that you feel as an adult. And so if you're not careful and you date like you're married, it can feel like divorce when you break up. And that was the case for me.
Yeah. And and I'm going to get some of those emotions from you, but just to insert here, we've done a book project with Ken Wilgus, Dr. Ken Wilgus, Feeding the Mouth That Bites You, about how to emancipate teenagers.
Yes.
But one of the things he said in there, it was like 1955 or something, that the term teenager came into existence. This is not an old term. It's kind of a modern term. And that culturally, people got married at 14, 15, 16, and that was normal.
Imagine.
So we're actually in those teen years in our culture, we're waiting till 18 or older to make that big decision about marriage. But we do pretend to be in that space, and that has its own dangers to it, especially physically.
Yeah, definitely. But I do have a lot of hope for this generation too, that they're learning from the mistakes of their parents, and they're learning how to do relationship well too in that space.
Do you see it?
I do see it.
That's encouraging.
There's a lot of hard too. Bringing in like predominant text message relationships. I mean, there's a whole conversation on the teen dating life in today's culture.
But I appreciate that trend line. If it's improving and there are greater boundaries and things like that, that's a good sign.
It is a good sign. There's a lot of good, I think, in this Gen Z and Gen Alpha. There's a lot of things that they're learning from our mistakes and working on, and we can come alongside and help them do even better as well.
The other thing is just generally the lessons we learn about family. And you shared a story, and this is so heart-touching, I'll say it that way. You regretted the lack of relationship, or how your relationship was with your mom.
My mom, yeah.
And, just describe the setup there. What was the difficulty or difficulties?
Yeah.
And was it ever mended? Is your mom still here?
My mom and I actually had a very special relationship from an early age. She was a single mom, and it was just she and I for the first 5 years of my life. And she was my world. I loved my mom. But as I became a teenager, the world sort of turned on its axis and somehow just revolved around me. I don't know how that happens, but
just happened.
It just happened to be that I was the center of my world. And, in those teen years, looking back, there a lot of relationship mistakes that I made. And I don't regret the fights that we had as much as I regret the apathy, that I lived under the same roof as this amazing woman for 18 years and took her for granted so often. And at the time you think, you're just focused on yourself, on your relationships, on school, on your stuff. And you don't think that eventually change is going to come, and it might come slowly or it might come all at once. And for me, everything changed the day I found out my mom had cancer. And we had 9 months after that, and I was no longer in the house, but when I lost her at 27, I regretted so many of those years that I could have done relationship with her better, that I could have taken advantage of all the wisdom that she had to offer, all the just the late night baking in the kitchen or whatever, sewing. Moments. All those moments. And it makes me super passionate to help families take advantage of those moments now and to make the most of family. You
speak in the book about a family manifesto, which I think is great. I don't think we have one. The fact that I don't know it is probably the case.
Not, yeah.
But that family manifesto, what does it look like? How do you create it? What do you put in it?
The Family Manifesto is basically a list of 14 statements that I created in light of wanting to do family well and to help teens and young adults take advantage of the years that they have with their parents and their siblings in their home. So it's things like, I'll tell my family I love them every chance I get.
that's good. I like that.
I'll get my camera out and actually take photos, or let my parents take photos. They always get so upset when I get my camera out, but I want those memories. I want to record those memories on my camera or in my journal. We'll fight fair, the things like, all families are going to disagree, but we want to learn to disagree well and to not use weapons that are going to hurt each other.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's just a way to be intentional about doing family relationships
Well, it sounds like things that circle around treating each other well, speaking well to each other.
Yeah.
Speaking life over each other. Those are all good things. A lot of teens and parents, that's one of the top things people will contact us about is difficult relationships between them as the parent and our teens or our 20-somethings even. What are some things that parents can do? You sounded like as a teen girl, you kind of had the seeds of this, the fact that the Lord has used you to create a family manifesto is evidence of that. You may be a little unique that way. A lot of teens just turn off with their parents and they don't care. You can try to connect with me, but I don't want to connect with you. And you think about that. What can a parent do? It feels like you're trying with no tools.
That's so relatable.
Yeah, like help me.
Yes, no, there's a lot to unpack there. And I would say it goes both ways. I think, yes, our teens, they are in that space that most of us were in at that age of the world revolving around them. They're not thinking about mom and dad as parents with actual names, people with names and dreams and goals and heartache and all that you're sacrificing to provide for them in this season of their life, all the ways that you're trying to love them.
Just don't say those things.
Don't say it.
I'm sitting there going,
keep it breezy. Keep it breezy.
Do you know what I'm doing for you?
Right? No,
don't do that.
This has been it's hard for me as well, but learning to love with no expectation in return is what Christ modeled for us and what we get to learn on a deeper level in this season of raising teens and young adults is being the person who will always love, always support, always provide, and not have the expectation that it's going to be reciprocated evenly.
This is a really personal question, so I want to apologize before I ask it, but I think there'll be some gold in your answer. The relationship you had with your mom and that difficulty that you described, going back to when you were a teen and the negligence that you described that you had for her and didn't really make the time to be with her. Is that turned around with your own two teen daughters? Or is it like God's little lesson here? You remember how you treated your mom? Well, guess what? Your kids are going to treat you like that too. Have you tasted that, or have you been able to break that generational thing?
Both.
Okay.
I think both. I think there's an element where I got a taste of my own medicine. And there's also...
You did get a little bit of that.
Every parent prays that their kid will get one just like them. And
that's super healthy, though, for the parent to see that. Oh, my goodness. They're treating me just like I treated my mom.
Oh,
or my
for
dad.
sure.
If you can see it, that's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. And on the flip side, I feel like I've had some really great mentors in my life who have taught me how to parent teenagers well. And I've taken that advice to heart. And so I've been laying groundwork for, since they were little, and how to create lines of communication and how to show them love in the way that they receive it. So I think for the parent who sees their teen as just not caring and not wanting to be involved in their parent's life at all, some of that sometimes is how we're coming across as parents.
It's pain. It's pain in the child's heart of some
absolutely,
sort.
Absolutely.
Because it's not natural.
Or they feel like, they're going to get a lecture or
right.
or they don't believe that their parents have their best interest at heart.
Hey, allow me to interrupt for just a moment here to say how much we appreciate you watching. Now, if you find value in this content, subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help to us. Let's go ahead and return to the show. Jesse, the book has so many practical elements to it. One of them is what I see it right now because you walk in the room and you're smiling. And that's one of your tips for young girls, for frankly all of us, is smile more at people. What's the impact of a smile?
That's good.
This was fascinating to me. I was traveling to visit my nephew, little 9-month-old little boy, and his family is all Asian. And I don't look much like their family. But every time I smiled at him, he would come with the biggest grin. Just big. I'm a sucker for making babies smile, you guys. I honestly, I'm the weird lady in the checkout line who's like making faces at the baby until they smile. And I just could not get enough. And as I was on my way home, I think too much. But I was thinking about, why would my nephew have smiled back at me? Like, what made him trust me? Like, babies, they're unfiltered in their emotions. Like, they're going to cry if they're freaked out. Like, it's not like they have an obligation to smile back. They don't hide their emotions. So for him to smile back at me means that he felt like he could trust me. He felt a sense of connection with me, and made him happy. It brought him joy. And I thought, what brought him joy? It was only my facial expressions. And I don't think we grow out of that. As adults, we can communicate warmth and trust and confidence and care for another person simply by communicating with our face, showing an expression on our face that's positive.
Hey, you encourage young women and all of us to believe in miracles. That can be a dicey thing. I mean, this idea that God could still do miracles. Speak to the importance of believing for miracles, and then your experience with it.
I think most of us, if we read the scripture cover to cover, know that nowhere does it say God has stopped doing miracles. We know hypothetically and theologically that, yes, God can perform miracles. But I think in our own lives, we get so caught up in the here and now that we forget that God is the same God. He's still capable. And I had a very real experience with this years ago. I was at Yosemite National Park with my husband. He does landscape photography. And so we had gone from one end of the park to the other. It was covered in snow. It was New Year's Day. Oh. One end of the park to the other taking photos. And near the end of the day, we pulled into Curry Village to get a snack. And he looked down and he said, "Jess, my wedding ring's gone." And we thought, oh, like, there's no way. Like, where, who knows where it could be? We checked the car, we checked the seat cushions, and we're just like, okay, it's gone. And on our way out of Yosemite that night, we were driving out. He said, I just want to go back to one more spot, this spot that we had gone at the beginning of the day, because it'll be better lighting.
All the way over on the other side of the park.
Yeah, on the other side of the park. So I'm like, okay, sure, fine. We went, and he ran off with his camera down the trail, and I was trailing behind and just walking along in the snow. And I just prayed this prayer: Lord, I know you know where that ring is, and I know it's not a big deal in light of eternity, but if you would just show us where it is, we would remember every New Year's Day that you're a God who does miracles. And I kid you not, I looked down at my feet in the snow, and making a perfect silver circle was Paul's ring, right there in the snow.
Right at your feet. Right at that moment.
Right at that moment.
Wow.
And I just, so now every New Year's Day we throw a party remembering.
So you kept your promise.
We did. And a few years later, we were hiking in the Sierra Nevada mountains. We had hiked 8 miles that day, pulled into camp, exhausted. And Paul looks down, and his wedding ring is gone.
Oh, my goodness.
And I thought, first of all, why did we not get that ring size the first time? Like,
you need to eat more.
We're idiots. We need to fatten you up a little bit. And honestly, I was so embarrassed. I didn't even want to pray. I didn't pray. I was like, God already returned it once. Like, asking a second time, that's a little presumptuous. But we looked around the camp and we didn't find it. And he's like, I'm going to go hike up this mountain up here to get the sunset. I'm like, that's fine. I'm staying here. It's cold. So I got into the tent. And as I was walking into the tent, I was praying, Lord, I'm so embarrassed to even ask, but I know you know where Paul's wedding ring is. And clearly you can do miracles. You've done it before. So if you wouldn't mind showing us where it is, we would remember that you are a God who not only does miracles, but is incredibly patient with us. And I pulled the sleeping bag up as I got into my bag, and it was sitting on top of the sleeping bag. And I was just in tears. Like, what a kind God.
I wonder how many of those things we don't even notice, even as believers, that we're not in tune enough.
Yeah.
To show, to really see the little gestures that God is doing for us every day.
Absolutely, every day.
I think when we get to heaven, that maybe that's all out there for us and we see it all.
Yeah.
And we just drop to our knees.
I think
going,
we will,
"Lord,
absolutely.
I had no clue."
And I have to share the third story about missing rings, though, because this does sort of
You
bring
had a third incident?
I'm so embarrassed to say, Jim, except this time it was my wedding ring.
Oh,
And
my goodness.
I, through a series of events that I don't need to get into, had to punch a life-size hockey puck for a camera for a video that we were making at a Christian camp. So
Wow, yeah.
somehow during the punching scene, my wedding ring flew off my hand into a front yard. It was not a mountain. It was not Yosemite covered in snow. It was just a front yard with some grass. And so I was feeling a little confident, like, okay, God, this is child's play to you.
I got this one.
We looked in the grass, didn't find it. I'm praying like, Lord, clearly you can do miracles. Clearly you know where this ring is. I never found my wedding ring.
Oh, wow.
And mine was more expensive than Paul's. I'm a little salty I got about that one. But
Oh,
I think
interesting.
the three stories are all part to one whole truth, that God can do miracles. He wants us to ask. We can ask again and again, even when we've asked before, because he doesn't tire of giving good gifts to his kids. And when he does say no, it's for a higher purpose that maybe we can't see in that moment, but we can trust that he is a good God.
Yeah, and I think the question there, Jesse, is how do you not become bitter over him not answering
That's
that
right.
one?
That's right. Because he said no to healing my mom from cancer. He said no to finding that wedding ring, which is such child's play. He said no to a job that I really wanted, or, we have to be able to ask for those miracles and trust the response. Like that I feel like is true faith.
Allow me to interrupt for a moment to say how much I appreciate you watching. If you find value in this content, please subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help. Now, let's get back to the show. You have someone in the book that you called Cassie. I'm sure the name has changed, but you said she's one of the most beautiful women that you ever saw. And then as you got to know her, different circumstances, you realized she did not have that opinion of herself. So describe that, the observation of that, and talking with her about it.
Yeah, it was quite a few years ago. I was doing research for a book on beauty, and I did a survey for women of my acquaintance just to get a handle on, how they felt about themselves. And I thought for sure that Cassie, I was so intimidated to talk to her. It was really silly. Like, she was
that's
so
interesting.
beautiful. It took me 2 weeks to get up the nerve just to say hi to her and meet her. I worked with her. And she was the picture of down to earth and seemed really confident. And so I thought I would give her this survey as well, because surely she would help balance things out for the rest of us insecure women, right? To give a little perspective. But her answers ended up being the most insecure of all of us, that she listed a long list of things that she wanted to change and was really down on herself. And it just helped me understand that we as women, it doesn't come naturally to see the beauty hiding right under our noses.
Why do you think that is? I mean, somebody that you, as a woman, you're observing how beautiful she is. You just wouldn't think someone like that is struggling at all. You would think that her struggle would be
Something
humility.
else. Yeah,
right.
right.
So the
Yeah.
Lord made me so beautiful. How do I,
Yeah.
but it's not that. It's always the
No.
imperfection.
Yeah. And we're getting an IV drip of perfection from the media since we were young, since our magazine days for those of us a little bit older. But now for
internet,
this
yeah,
generation, the
digital.
internet, they're getting a constant IV drip of how they should look, and everything's touched up and airbrushed, and the enemy loves to take those lies and twist them. And I believe, Jim, it's because God designed women to be beautiful. It's part of our inherent nature to be the beautiful counterpart to Adam. And the enemy loves to take anything that God has designed and twist it and turn it into lies that he feeds us.
Speak to that devastating effect, though. I think digitally, magazines, of course, it had that impact, but now with a new type of imagery, I think it's even more devastating and more potent. So
Absolutely.
How does that affect our young girls today, both Christian and unchristian?
Oh, it has huge effects. And I think now we're seeing, I think it's more common knowledge. Now we're seeing lots of research about the effects of social media on young women and their views. I think even the advent of online porn has had a huge effect on girls and their identity and their view, their perception of beauty, their perception of what is beautiful. And the enemy is just having a field day twisting the images that they're seeing and the lies that they're hearing from young men and from all the images that they're seeing online to convince them that they have to be over-sexualized to be beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's devastating to a girl's
You know,
heart.
Jean's always been good with our boys, and now they're young men. I forever will call them our boys. But, you know, to point them to the inward beauty and to make sure, even if I say, wow, you know, to the boys, that's a really pretty young woman. And Jean will say, yeah, but what's her inside look like? You know, just to make sure they're aware that that's more important. And that's a good thing to work on.
Absolutely. More important for sure. But I think as a church, sometimes we can swing the pendulum one way or another. And I think it's important for girls to hear that they are beautiful outwardly too.
Yeah.
And to emphasize that God just has a flair for diversity and for difference and beauty. And those things that we as girls find are different from those images that we're seeing are often the most beautiful things about us.
It's interesting how the enemy can rob that. I'm just thinking about that, how men exploit that, you know, put guilt trip on a woman in that area so he can get what he wants from her, whatever that might be. But there are chains of bondage and all of that. And the more you can de-link yourself and understand how God sees you, and that's true for all of us, but it seems to be so potent with women and girls.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my hopes, is just to bring freedom into this area, to help girls see the truth behind the lies and see the beauty that is already woven into their DNA and actually appreciate it. I'm like, what's the point of being beautiful if you don't even appreciate the beauty that you have?
You have a long list of what you're not measuring up to. That woman, Cassie. I mean, that's sad, really. Okay, let's move to the rat story. It's a bit of a turn, but
From beauty to rats.
your husband and the
this
rat
is a
story.
fun
Now, Jean, if you're
story.
listening, put your fingers in your ears because you're not going to like this one. She's an animal lover. So, yeah. So
Even rats?
Well, you know, they're all creatures.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm a pretty strong woman, but I have a thing for rodents. I just cannot do
What do you
rodents.
mean you have a thing for
Like
rodents?
I
You
can't-
like them?
No, they terrify me. You know, I can handle snakes, I can handle spiders, like all
Wow.
of it. Rodents, I don't know.
They're creepy.
They're creepy.
Okay.
I don't like them. And
So-
so my husband and I were newly married. We're renting a little house in a California beach town, and it gets toasty. And in that part of California, you don't have air conditioning. So if it gets toasty, you know, you got to open some windows. It was hot. So I'm like, hun, let's just open the front door, get a little fresh air. He's worried about security, as men often do. He
Maybe
doesn't
he's
feel
worried
that
about
it's a safe. He didn't feel it was safe. But I convinced him to leave the door open. And we're sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden something runs by. And I will tell you, if you've seen Princess Bride, you have seen the thing that ran by, the rodent of unusual size that ran into our apartment. And I jumped up on the couch like a little girl and screamed. And I'm like, get it, honey, get it. And my brave knight sprung into action.
Dun, 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 dun.
He ran down the hallway, cornered the fiend in the kitchen. And I hear the commentary. I'm up on the couch, like total chicken, listening to the commentary in the kitchen, and it is hilarious. You know, I'm hearing banging and things, and he's like, oh, I think I got it. It's in the stove. And I'm like, oh, it's in the stove. And he's like, yeah, I think I got it. And he's standing there holding my kitchen knife in his hand.
The best knife.
And I looked at him, and never mind that he faced my worst nightmare, challenged the fiend to a duel and won.
Yeah.
I looked at him and said, you used my kitchen knife? I was so mad at him.
That's marriage.
Oh, my goodness.
It is so marriage. But I learned that if we want men to be their best selves, to be brave, to come to our rescue, to be good fathers, to bring justice to the world, we're going to have to cut them a little slack if they do things a little differently than we women would want them done.
I would appreciate that. How about you, John?
I like slack.
Sometimes bravery makes a mess, and
Yeah.
we need to be okay with that as
That
women.
was so sweet of him to go to battle for
It
you.
was.
Yeah.
It was
I
sweet.
would have said, yeah, he'll leave sometime. Just leave the door open.
Probably.
Let's get some food and we'll run it out the
There
door.
you go.
Right?
There you
don't
go.
have to get violent.
Jesse, in this book, you tell so many stories. One of them had to do, was kind of a fairy tale. about a baby dragon. And so I'd love for you to tell that story because there's a great application for us in that.
We got rats and
Thank you,
dragons.
dragons.
This
Oh
is good.
my.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is sort of after coming off of writing a fiction series and then writing this book, I had a little fun with some of the stories. So once upon a time, there was a knight, and he was very successful as a knight, and he had lots of treasure, and he needed something to guard his treasure. And so he found a merchant in town who had a baby dragon, and he said, "How much for your baby dragon?" And he said, "I'll let you have this baby dragon if you can control him." And the knight said, "Well, no problem. I oust troublesome ogres and I rescue fair damsels. A little dragon will be no problem for me." And it wasn't. He took the little dragon and he took it home and put it in front of a cave where he'd stored all of his treasure. Well, the knight went off on some grand adventures to rescue fair damsels and to oust troublesome ogres. And when he came back, he came home with 2 chests of gold that the king had given him for his troubles, and he went to his cave. But when he got there was a giant, ferocious dragon guarding the opening, so big and ferocious that the knight couldn't get through. And he was so mad that he went and searched for that merchant and said, "That dragon that you gave me has become a nuisance. I can't even get to my treasure." And the merchant said, "If you had taken time to train that dragon when he was young, he would serve you now. But if he has become your master, there is nothing I can do."
Wow.
And the knight learned that he needed time management.
There we go.
Yeah, but if you
Time management.
pulled it into our schedules are so crazy, especially as
Yeah.
teens. There's so much pressure to do everything and be everything in sports and homework and college searches. And then as young adults, you've got jobs and all of the things. And if we don't take time to master our schedule and be the boss of our time, it will be our taskmaster, and we'll miss
Interesting.
out on all the good that God has for us.
You know, it's so true. And so often the notes that we get here, the emails that focus, the counseling line, will be a lot of particularly fathers who built their career, maybe built their business, whatever it might have been, but they lament one thing, and you know what it is. They weren't there when their kids grew up, and they don't have really a very close relationship with them now, which is your point.
Yeah,
The
that's
dragon
right.
fable there.
That's right.
But that's how it shows up in real life. And they will now spend the rest of their life trying to recapture that, regain it, or give up on it.
That's right. Yeah,
it's
for
such a sad
adults,
story.
that's exactly right. And for young people, I'm seeing it as anxiety. When I ask girls the hardest part of being a teen today, it's the pressure. There's so much pressure. And I think some of that is, it's multifaceted, but part of it is just old-fashioned like life skills and time management and learning how to take control and to say no to
Yeah.
good things and
Yeah.
to make sure that they're being the boss of their time.
Speaking of taking control, the other big thing that we get so often is use of technology. And so many people, we've had many experts come in and talk about the use of technology. Keep that smartphone away from your kids as long as possible. That's the best advice I got and Jean got. I think our kids were 17 and 15 by the time they got a phone. But what did you do? What were you confronting in that area of technology with yourself or with your girls?
Yeah, I have benefited from the experts that you've had on Focus on the
Good.
Family.
I hope many have.
I've learned a lot too. And yes, we did try to delay as long as possible for my own girls that technology, but also this generation is not ever going to be without a device. And
It
so
is
we
part of
have
life.
to teach them how to fight back against the distraction. So as they're moving into the teen years and especially young adulthood, but hopefully before they leave your house, modeling for them what it looks like to keep tech in its proper place
Yeah.
and to have the devices, but the goal is for it to be their idea. Hey, I'm going to put a limit. I'm going to have a bedtime for my phone. I'm going to limit the notifications that I'm getting. But to have those conversations with them, because if we're just enforcing it and we're just saying, no, you can't have, then when they can have, they're not going to have any of the tools to fight that distraction. I'm having to learn it as a middle-aged woman of having to, and I tell a couple stories in the book of just, despite my best efforts to not be distracted, getting distracted.
Yeah,
and
it's so easy. And, the inoculation strategy as a parent is all around us. I mean, it's not just technology, but it's things that they're going to see. And what I mean by the inoculation strategy then, as a parent, how do you inform them that this is real, this is out there, it will happen. It will find you. But when it does, here's what we need to do. And here's how you
Right.
need to respond as a believer in Jesus. And, it takes more cultivation in that relationship with your child today, I think, because we have to be very targeted about what they're going to encounter compared to 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, it takes more intentionality then, which means it takes more time, which means you can't be distracted by sports and other things that I would be watching. I got to be
Yeah.
engaged with the kids, make sure I'm in tune with what they're doing. I think if I could wind the clock back, that would be an area I would have been more diligent on. And Jean would have said, "Oh, thank you, Lord." Right? Because I think I was partially in, but not all the way in. And Jean was all the way in, but out there by herself so often. And that had to cause her frustration.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
you know what? They'll pick it up. They'll get it. They'll get it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you don't want to be ignorant.
It's a common
Yeah.
common scenario.
That also is true of just screen time in general. Here's a statistic that I know you say on these things too, but people within the church, men in the church, look at pornography 68%.
That's crazy.
It
Yeah.
was really a
yeah.
shocker to me, at least once a month.
Yeah.
And almost 30% of women in the church, 28 point something.
Yeah.
And again, those are things that we've got to model for our own kids. I mean, how do you speak with any force or moral authority if you yourself are trapped in it? I mean, not to sound, but we've got to do our job in our own life so our kids, they'll sense when you're not real.
Yeah.
It comes out.
Absolutely.
They'll know if you're doing things with your screen and your phone.
Sure.
Because it just happens. It
Yeah.
just comes out. So
Yeah.
speak to that. If I
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to emphasize grace here because I mean, a lot of those people in the church
Yeah.
that have been addicted
There's reasons.
or are, it's designed to be addicting. Like it's not, we're not superhuman.
Right.
And it's by the grace of God, I feel like that any of us are not falling into that trap at any given time. And so to both model how to walk in purity of heart, mind, and spirit for our kids, but also to help them understand just the very physical nature of addiction and the importance of resisting those temptations or getting help when you need it and fighting against that.
Jesse, we're narrowing in here. You also share very, openly about your biological father, and you mentioned when we first started this conversation that your mom was a single parent mom at 5 and up till 5, and just speak to that hole in your own heart about the vacancy of not having a father.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both have talked about this in the past. There's a unique kind of grief that comes with not having a parent or both parents in your life. My mom was amazing, but as a little girl, I used to dream like what it would be like, asking questions. Did he want to be in my life? Did he not? What would he be like? Would he make all my problems, not problems anymore? And
What would it like being having a dad?
yeah, and I was
wow.
very blessed to have a stepdad at 5. My mom married for the first time. My stepdad was amazing to love me as his own, and that's a whole nother story. And the relationship we have now is priceless. But at the time, as a young person, it was a difficult relationship with my stepdad, and I wondered what it would be like. And I had the opportunity when I was 17 years old to meet him for the first time. And I was sure he was going to be just everything that I imagined my whole life, that he would be tall and handsome and wise and just want to be a part of my life. And when I met him for that first time, it very much was the case. I mean, he was so charismatic and shook my hand so warmly. And we had an amazing conversation that night, gave me so much good advice about life. And it seemed that he wanted to be in my life. And we started writing letters back and forth. And it really felt like a happily ever after sort of ending to all those years of questioning and doubt. And then one day the letters just stopped coming. And I still to this day don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, if it was something I said or something someone else said or what it was. I've tried reaching out over the years, and I'm hopeful that it's not the end of the story. I'm still praying that there will be some reconciliation there. I don't need anything from him, but I want to have relationship.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's taught me that other people's choices affect me, but they don't define me.
Yeah.
And that's such an important lesson for our kids to learn, for us as adults to remember that God has given us this little thing called free will, and it means that other people's free will is gonna hurt me. It's gonna wreck my world sometimes, but it doesn't mean that my life has to be defined by their choices.
And it's so easy to say that and so hard to live it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
one of the most tender letters I've ever received here at Focus, and we want to hear from you. We would love to hear about how Focus helped you in your marriage or helped you in your parenting. And I got a letter from a 32-year-old girl who said when she was 7, her dad took her to lunch and said, your mom and I aren't getting along, and we're going to end our marriage. We're going to get a divorce, but it's not because of you, and I just want to make sure you knew that. And I thought, oh, this is good. That's a good thing to say if you're facing that. And he went on to say at that lunch, you know, we'll have every other weekend together, and I'll have you 2 weeks out of the summer, and laid this expectation out for her. And she never heard from him again. That lunch was the end of it at 7.
Wow.
And her letter was just full of grief. How she, and I think, it gives me tears thinking about it for you, the search for that daddy's love led her into some really dark places.
Yeah.
Looking for men and
Yeah.
looking for that affection. So your point of what that does to us is deeper than what we sometimes realize.
Yeah,
and how it
absolutely.
actually can end up controlling your life if you don't let go of it.
If you don't let go, that's exactly right. And I'm living proof that God is a father to the fatherless, and he meets us in any of those broken places, rejection, betrayal, hurt. He will meet you there if you let him. All he asks is that we give up our right to judge and our right to hold it against them and to pretend like we're God and we can control the people around us. And he can bring beauty out of those stories. He's a good author.
And, you know, with divorce rates as high as they are, I mean, they're going down. That's great, but they're still way too high. There's so many broken little boys' hearts, little girls' hearts.
That's right.
And, man, if you were that person, get a hold of us. We want to be there to help you. God is the restorer. Even if the other side never comes around, God can still heal that hole in your heart. And Jesse, it's a heavy place to end, but this is such a great book, Your Brightest Life, Tips for Navigating Relationships, Health, Faith, Mindset, and more. And you've captured it all. This is a great little book for a mom to help her with her daughter and fathers and sons. I mean, it's not void in that area either. So thank you so much for being with us. I hope you'll want a copy. This is one of the fun ways we do ministry together. And if you can make a gift of any amount, and if you could do that monthly, it really helps. That's how Gene and I support Focus. We'll send you a copy of the book to say thank you for being involved with the ministry, for saving marriages, saving babies' lives, and so much more. And Jesse is willing to partner with us in that way. And we'll give you the book, and you can send a gift and do ministry with us.
Yeah, reach out today if we can help, or if you'd like to donate and get a copy of Your Brightest Life. Our number is 800, the letter A in the word family, 800-232-6459, or we'll have details in the program description. And Jim mentioned making a monthly pledge. We're looking for 1,000 families or individuals to join our Friends of Focus on the Family team. That means you sign up and you're committing to making a monthly donation to us. And as Jim said, that's a partnering opportunity. You'll have the satisfaction of knowing that automatically your donation is coming to Focus, and we're using it to reach lives around the world for Christ. You can sign up to be a Friends of the Focus on the Family team at our website, and the link is in the program description.
Jesse, again, it was so good to have you with us. Thanks.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, as always.
And thank you for joining us today for Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.